Tom,
I want to see what it looks like on YouTube here.
Tom in his office got a dartboard with Austin's picture on it. He throws darts at.
He got it from Steve.
I was going to say, I thought that'd be more Steve.
I just started the live stream. Must be a delay till it comes up. I don't know. But if you're in the actual hangout, then you can be in it interacting. So, all right, we'll check back in. I don't remember the screen share. Oh, it's coming up now. And then you can join the audience. Oh. But if you're in the actual hangout, then you can be in it interacting. So mute that circular. It's pretty far behind.
What is happening?
Okay, it's like 2 minutes behind, I guess. I don't know.
Well, what time is it on the clock in there?
Yeah.
It is about 2 minutes off. Yeah.
Oh, see, then you're muting.
Well, now we've got that video and a video thing going on, where that would happen last year, where I'd put their video on the video. And
I was gonna say you need to have it. I was gonna say you need to turn that so you can see it up there and just let it go in for infinity.
Okay, so first thing, so we went through chapter 1 in our fast manner. I just I posted a couple links here about, I didn't make them links, that was kind of dumb, but about Case, because Case was one of those alternatives for software. And Case tools are interesting. Has anyone ever heard of like Rational? It used to be called Rational Rows. It's discussed in here somewhere. Rational. No, it's in one of the other links. So here's an example of a Case tool, but you actually like specify your classes and certain things, and then it writes code for you. These were big back in like 2005 when I was studying computer science. Like we did quite a bit of stuff with that Rational. I think IBM has it now. It's been passed around. I think I know less about it just because once you are a developer, you're kind of like, well, why would I have software write code for me? I'll do it myself. But I put a couple links about Case, and then this last one I thought was interesting, kind of like talking about how in certain ways like agile methods are, I don't know, sort of at odds with Case tools. And I don't know if you want to check it out. I thought it was kind of interesting. So today we'll go into chapter 2. This chapter is much shorter, and a lot of it, honestly, I think is super simple, common sense. So we'll kind of just clip through this, and we'll go into chapter 3 on Tuesday. So let me pull up the slides. So just to summarize chapter 1, we talked about information system analysis and design. So the process of developing and maintaining an information system. So there's a bunch of different ways to go about this, but there's a life cycle to go through. So the modern approach, when we're kind of looking at these systems, we look at the processes that go on in the business and what data are we dealing with. And then we propose systems either using existing software or creating our own software or piecing together different components. So there's a lot of choices there. Are the slides coming through? Can someone check? Because now when I see it, it says U and it's black on my little window in the lower right.
Yeah, coming through.
Okay, it just must not feed the screen share back to me. So, okay. All right. Oh, I need to be over here. Okay. So we talked about that systems development life cycle. So planning and selection, system analysis, system design, system implementation. So the four steps we go through with that life cycle. So the chapters from now on, we're going to dig deeper. Today, we're going to talk largely about sources of software to put together for a system. Where might you find software? What are some of the routes you might take? And then we're going to talk about, in chapter 3 next week, we'll talk about tools for planning, like Gantt charts. Have you guys done that in any? So Gantt charts are those kind of charts where you have all these lines going across, like you start with design and then that feeds into the next step. Certain of steps can overlap. It's kind of like a flow chart, but we'll look at that. It's a big tool used for planning for software engineering and for these kind of systems projects. It's what Microsoft Project does. But like I said, I don't really like projects, so I'll find a better online alternative. So that'll be chapter 3. Is basically planning projects. How do you put scope to it of time and start thinking about dollars? Of course, that's important. So this chapter, we're going to talk about understanding outsourcing. I mean, to me, it's kind of simple. I don't know. I mean, a lot of these. We're going to talk about six places you can get software from to use in a system. And again, I think a lot of us, these are going to be simple. How to evaluate off-the-shelf software. So if you're not going to develop something yourself for a business, how do you decide if certain off-the-shelf is going to work? And then how can we reuse things once we've invested dollars to create them? So outsourcing is the practice of turning over some or all responsibility for information systems, applications, and operations to another firm. So I think we're all pretty familiar with outsourcing for support, right? For call centers and that kind of idea. This is just taking it one step further. You outsource, your data management and some of those things to an outside company. So examples, outsourcing firm develops and runs applications on their computers. So like payroll. So some company has their own payroll software they've created. They allow other companies to outsource their payroll to them, like ADP, things like that. So that's pretty common with payroll. Outsourcing firm runs applications at your site on your computers. So that's a little different situation. They're not hosting the applications themselves. They're running at your site, but they're kind of managing it. So the management is outsourced of those systems. A lot of this has changed with the cloud. So this book is outdated with the cloud. We'll get to a slide where they say, what we said this was 2011, right? And they give an estimate of the percentage of business that will be done in the cloud by 2013. And I tried to look up real numbers, but it's hard to find like exactly what they were. Percentage of business activity done in the cloud is kind of not a specific enough thing to look up. But the cloud in here is discussed in a lot of ways as a up and coming thing, whereas we're pretty much fully in it now. So that part is a teeny bit outdated. So why do we outsource? Obviously in business, and like we're layering all this within terms of a business, it's about dollars and cents. So it's cost effective. So it saves you money. So like when I started my software company, at first you kind of do everything and then you realize, what can we outsource? Like payroll is an easy thing to outsource. Stop worrying about it yourself and pay the small amount. We outsourced all of our, hosting. We didn't have our own server or anything. We paid Rackspace to manage that for us. So the university, I think, now pays to have Moodle hosted and managed outside the university. When we used to run Blackboard here instead of Moodle, we had 3 full-time employees that had to run that system, maintain the servers, troubleshoot, provide support, and then I was on a committee to decide, are we going to use Blackboard? Or are we going to switch to something else? Well, when I was on that, they were saying for Moodle, they could pay Moodle rooms $5 a student a year, and they would host all the software, do all the updates, provide all the support. So $5 per student per year is like $75,000. So you could cut 2 full-time jobs of people that probably made pretty good money and just get rid of them. And now they have one person that just kind of is the connection. So cost effective. Overcome organizational problems in the informational systems unit. So sometimes you can outsource just because you can go to someone that's more knowledgeable. So if you have some problems with your systems and you outsource it, hopefully you're outsourcing to someone that's really good at it, like payroll. I mean, if you're going to outsource your payroll, you hope you're outsourcing it to an expert in payroll. So I mean, outsourcing should be considered. That's just, I mean, all these things should be considered, or why would we talk about them? It's hard sometimes to convince a business, if you're an analyst going in and trying to help them to improve, that some of the things they could do could be better done by someone else. But the thing is if they can let go of certain parts, then they can concentrate on the things they're really good at and not waste their time on stuff like that. It's just, I can tell you from experience with my business partner and, you know, businesses we dealt with, a lot of especially small businesses have trouble with that idea of giving up control of certain things, but it's a good way to go in a lot of cases. So now we're going to talk about sources of software. So we're going to go through 6 places to get software. So you've gone into a business as an analyst, you've looked at it, you've realized they have certain things that could be improved, and you want to propose software to help them run better. Where do you look for that software? So in this class, eventually we're going to get to the focus of what's the source of the software going to be. It's going to be us. We're going to make our own software. So you're going to identify a problem for business and propose a solution you have.
So we're not allowed to outsource our stuff for this class?
No.
I charge $20 an hour.
Yeah. So the first source of software is it's an IT service firm. So basically, if you don't have your resources to make your own system, there's not an off-the-shelf system, so no one has a software. You need this very specific thing that doesn't exist. You don't have the manpower or the skills to develop internally. You can go to one of these service firms and have them come in and help you do it. So these service firms help companies develop custom information systems for internal use. So I think maybe like Advanced Technology Group, you guys know about them? I think they would fall into this category. They develop custom solutions as well as, you know, modifying and adapting existing solutions. So they're growing huge. Like they were very small and they're up to, I don't know, 50 employees or something. I had a couple people came and spoke to my high school students, and they're planning on getting much bigger. And they have a couple offices, but it's mainly out of Missoula. So you need something, you just don't know how to do it, so you go to someone like them to kind of work. And they're not like a software development firm. They're in this IT service kind of category. So some of these service firms will develop, host, and run the applications. You know, if you want something to develop, but you don't have the servers and the equipment to run it on, they may even take care of managing that for you. Provide other services, talk about a generic bullet point, but you know, everybody always thinks, oh, we have this business providing this. What else can we offer to make more money? So there could be any number of things they might offer as well. And then the big thing, so they're going to have consultants that are experts in these areas, and that's what ATG has. They have people that would be knowledgeable about different types of business to be able to go in and help kind of come up with these. So that's the first source, IT technology service firm. The second source is kind of the obvious one, packaged software producers, though this whole idea of packaged is even kind of outdated, right? So how much packaged software do we buy anymore? But basically, this is the traditional, it's off-the-shelf software. Products range from broad-based packages to industry-specific packages. So, I mean, we know all about traditional software, basically, is what I'd call this. So there's two types, as this book defines them. Turnkey, so you buy it and it is what it is. That would be like Word or Office or Windows, or just it's a piece of software you buy. And then the opposite, non-turnkey, so you buy it, but it's highly customizable. Some things like, you know, QuickBooks you can buy as a turnkey and you use it, but you can also develop tons of custom modules. It's designed to have all these things plugged into it. So there's some that kind of fall in the middle. So the book claims off-the-shelf software can meet up to 70% of an organization's needs. It may even be higher than that. I mean, there's so many choices now, especially once we add cloud into it and, you know, options out there. So the need to develop a completely custom solution for something is, I don't know, it's diminishing, I'd say. 20 years ago, there just was not nearly as much software as there is now. It's amazing. I can think of really specific things I've looked for, and you can find 100 different software things out there. Now, whether any of them are good, that's the thing I always run into. There's a lot of junk out there.
I mean, like, there's still a lot of, like, government and stuff. They still use a lot of, you know, in-house development and stuff like that. But
there's a lot more of the in-house stuff in those kind of organizations. So, you know, I was just working with my friend. He's starting a bookkeeping, accounting deal, and, you know, everybody uses QuickBooks. But the big problem with QuickBooks is, how do you get your QuickBook file to your accountant so they can work on it, but you can still work on it? So in my company, like, we had a flash drive, and when it came time for payroll, we copied, and for them to do invoicing and stuff, for our bookkeeper, it was outside bookkeeper. We'd copy the QuickBooks file onto a flash drive, give it to them, make sure we don't touch it until we get it back. I mean, it seems crazy in today's world, right? So he's trying to create this paperless accounting firm. He's got this fancy scanner for scanning in everything and to be able to send to him. And he's looking at different softwares where they run it at the business and it's secure to get all the stuff they scan to him, so they don't have to send paper, because that's the other thing, is we'd give him a stack of paper to our accountant. And there's a lot of solutions out there for this. We've been looking at a ton of them, but that whole idea of passing the QuickBooks file back and forth, all the solutions are like, he talked to one company, they want him to pay $900 a month to ramp up 2 servers at their site to basically allow for that QuickBooks file to be simultaneously. And it's not, it even gets weirder. Basically, they ramp up a virtual machine and you connect through Citrix to QuickBooks software. They install your QuickBooks license on their server at their site, and then you remote in when you want to use QuickBooks, and then he can remote in and they can remote in. I mean, that's a really clunky system. I mean, our internet speeds for a lot of the people around here are not good enough for there to be like, well, we're going to do all of our work through a remote desktop system, and they want to charge them $900 and some a month for this. So basically, Intuit has made it so there's no good way to do this. They're trying to get you to sign up for QuickBooks Online, and then it's in their cloud, and then it's fine. But it's kind of there can be sources of software. QuickBooks has been the standard forever, but then you run into these really stupid solutions. So that's where these custom things kind of come in.
Do like I do on my Quicken. I actually have a shared file that transfers between my machines every time I update.
That's what I recommended to him. He's got this, it's called Smart Vault software for the secure scanning. Just have them, when it's time for him to do work, transfer the file to him and transfer it back. It's
not that big.
like doing the USB transfer, but easier, and save all that money. And then the other thing I told him, encourage all your new customers to do the QuickBooks Online. It's the people that have been using it forever he's going to have a hard time converting, but any people that are rolling in new. And
but it still saves the file that you can back up or move. What you have to do is put that file, link that file to the software that will
that'll sync them. Yeah. So I think that would work for them, as long as they don't simultaneously work on it, right? But a little communication. So, this just is kind of showing 70% seems low. Like you'd think maybe it would be higher, but it's things like that end up not meeting an organization's
especially with
needs.
even mobile applications and stuff that do so much now.
Yeah, right. So it's like there's a lot of off the shelf. It's just it's hard to stretch some of those to do everything. So ERP, so enterprise solution software. Has anyone heard of ERP software? So these are like the Oracle, SAP, these giant systems that a business pays millions of dollars to basically run everything inside. These are huge systems. So you'll also see them, ERP is enterprise resource planning. So these are enterprise solution software, but ERP is what everyone calls them, ERP systems. So the idea, and if you look at SAP or Oracle, they're the big ones in this. They have all these different modules. It might be to do accounting. It might be to do database stuff, all these components. And then you come in and say, well, this is my business. These are the modules I need. And they can piece them together, but they're highly connected. So each of those modules has a function like accounting or distribution. So all of your inventory, manufacturing, HR is a big one in these. So how do you track all your training materials and who's done the training they need to do, all that kind of stuff. So obviously every company is not going to need all the modules, but they can piece them together. So it's integrated to focus on business processes rather than business functional areas. So they're trying to, and this is just, again, it's their model, which makes sense. They want to work within a process rather than a specific. If they're too specific with a functional area, then they're kind of tied to that industry. So HR as a broad thing, that's a process. There's tons of HR processes. How do you onboard a new employee? How do you exit them from the system? Things like that. So basically you have this one information system with this kind of overriding and interconnected software that runs everything. And then hopefully every transaction in that business can occur within one system. Now, I've never personally used ERP softwares because you need to work at a pretty big company where they're using these a lot. And I just haven't had those kind of jobs, but all the big corporations use ERP software. So benefits, it is nice that you have a single place where everything goes. It's not like, well, you need to look in this software for the HR stuff and this software for inventory and this account. It's just all in one system, which helps the accuracy of the data, hopefully, because one is feeding into the other. So if your inventory system says you have this many items and this many have gone out the door, the other systems know that rather than there being a disconnect.
Hopefully.
Right. So, like a Walmart has huge they probably have developed their own, I would guess, when you're at that size, but they have very advanced systems for this. Trucks pull in, RFID tags automatically scan everything that comes in the store. Their inventory system automatically adjusts. It reverses on the other end. But a lot of smaller companies end up with a hodgepodge that's
A lot of them go out of business because of it, like the vans.
Oh yeah.
That was one of their biggest downfalls is, they'd sit there and you'd order something, it would take 3 weeks to get it.
Yeah.
They thought they had it here, but they actually didn't.
And they didn't have a good connection between their online and their,
Yep.
There was a time in the early 2000s where Vans was the number one online electronics retailer. Like hardly anyone knows that because we think of Vans as this like store, but they got in really early in the late 90s on that. For a while, they were pumping a lot of product out and it went south fast, but they did not have good systems in place for managing that. So less maintenance. I mean, these just kind of go hand in hand. Like you don't have 10 systems to handle, you have one. Flexibility of modules. So if your business changes, you can add more modules easily. It's not, and hopefully, and again, I haven't personally used them. Hopefully the modules all kind of work the same so people can work within them without being completely retrained. And it's, instead of saying, okay, we need a module to do inventory now because maybe you've moved your business model, instead of implementing a whole new software and bringing people in to install it and train it, you just tell your ERP provider, we want this. And I mean, they can easily just turn that on basically. So now, of course, this makes it sound great. Disadvantage, complexity of implementation. I mean, these are just huge systems. So you're basically going to have to completely change how the whole business runs if you change systems. So that's pretty complex. And then it's going to take time. I mean, I know I'd be interested to see some estimates, but it's probably a multi-year process to implement a system like this. I mean, it touches every single part of your business. Reliance upon consultants. So that's the business model of a lot of these systems is both from the company, but also from an independent standpoint. Once the software I'm trying to think of, it's not an ERP, but it's similar. It's Salesforce. It'll come up in here later, salesforce.com for tracking sales leads. It comes up later in here because it's a cloud-based deal. But in order to configure that for your business and set up the database, it's so complicated. You have to pay a consultant, and the consultants charge like $150 an hour to configure the software. My brother works at a nonprofit that uses this. That's how they track their members, like who donates to the nonprofit. And if they need a change, they have to pay an independent consultant big bucks. Actually, to the point where he's considered going to training and like getting the base level certification to work on it himself because it's so expensive. So that's all of these big systems like that, whether by design or just by the complexity and size of the system, you're going to have to probably pay someone good money to work on it for you. This kind of goes with that whole complexity of implementation. Like it's not just like you're inserting software and everything's business as usual. Chances are you're going to have to modify how you do things, and that's hard. I mean, I was really shocked with Orbital Shift and trying to get people to use scheduling software, like how embedded certain processes are in business, and to get that to change, even if it's like way for the better, it was way more difficult than I ever could have anticipated.
I took the intro to business class. That's the first thing I learned in that was the reason people do stuff in business is because they've always done it that way.
Yeah.
Like it's there's no rhyme or reason for it. There's probably 20 things that are faster and more efficient,
Yeah.
but they've always done it that way, so they're not changing it.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, and just weird little things that it's like, is this that big of a deal? So like we sold to Rosars and they said, well, we have to be able to sort our employees on the schedule by seniority. And it's like, well, why? Like that's just how it is. Like the senior employees need to show up first on the schedule, not alphabetized, not by position they work in, by seniority. It has no effect. Like it's just like this status thing within the business that like I'm higher on this list on the schedule. We had to completely like write custom feature to get that sale so that you could sort by a custom sort field basically, so you could put something in there to make it sort that way. It's like,
What the customer knows, right?
well, yeah, that's also what hurt us as a business, because anytime someone asked for that, we'd be like, oh yeah, we can do that. And a lot of times it was way harder than it seemed. And then
Why did you say yes to this?
yeah, exactly. So just those processes and practices. So the big ERP vendors are SAP and Oracle. So if you look around their sites, it's like overwhelming just to look at because there's so much there. Like on SAP, I mean, you can't even hardly get a grasp on the scope of what their system can do because it does everything. So I don't know.
Both run our oracles for a little while one day. It's interesting.
Yeah. I'm sure there's client lists, but just like what kind of places use SAP that if you went in, you may have used it, as a employee or even as a customer. Some of these systems, to some extent, you're interacting with if they're doing inventory.
Yeah. Actually, one of the last places I worked down at Valley Estates. It's a small place, but it's owned by a large conglomerate for maintenance and everything.
Okay.
It's all, I could put something in that building and every single place in the entire corporation could pull up the information.
Okay.
And it did inventory, the layout of the building, what piece of equipment are in which room.
It's finally starting to fade out. I don't see it as much, but I'm always shocked when you look at a computer at a business and it's like a green screen, like that's what their inventory system are. I mean, I don't see, but even 5 years ago, I still saw that a lot.
that's how Delta's was when I worked for them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like their whole baggage system, their all the records for everyone that was flying, it was all done by basically command.
Yeah.
No
It
wonder they lose all
was.
the language.
And that's, I
such a
mean,
pain in the-
that's because of some of these reasons. It's like to change that in a corporation that big is
Well, in theirs,
hard.
they said it was because of security.
Yeah.
Everything at the airport,
Right.
they're not changing anything because of security.
It's already passes the security guidelines.
Well, I mean,
and-
we still printed everything on dot matrix printers because they didn't want to change them for security reasons.
Right.
I mean, that's what they used for everything. If
Yeah.
that was actually true, I don't know.
It
but
is.
that's
It is, I mean,
Dot
I-
matrix, like all your government checks, always print on dot matrix.
Yeah.
They're not print on laser, because on a laser, get a piece of tape, have you take that ink right off. And we print hoods too,
Gotcha. Okay.
but dot matrix, you cannot do that. Too.
I see one check.
My check's on in.
So we've talked about two sources, right? The IT service firms, the ERP, now cloud computing, which it's funny. Yeah, I mean, just that they have to define this, in 2011, this was pretty new. That was when I graduated with my MBA in 2009. So this was like when I was in our first couple years at Orbital Shift, and like people didn't really know what cloud was to the level they do now. So it runs at remote sites. I think we're all most of these we're going to access through the internet, but some could use a VPN. Applications bought, installed, and maintained by a service provider, pay per use or month to month. I mean, these include software as a service as well as hardware as a service. So that hardware side has grown a lot where you're renting, processing power and that kind of thing. And then you can install whatever you want inside of it. And, you can ramp up on the Amazon cloud or the Microsoft Azure cloud, all sorts of different things, and run whatever you want. So, there are examples which just kind of show Salesforce.com was super early. It's kind of funny that Google Apps is, I mean, yeah, that's cloud for sure, but it's a good example. It's just, would these be the two examples they'd list now? I don't know. But Google Apps, as far as like if you went in and looked at a business and they're running an Exchange server, I would highly recommend to them that maybe Google Apps is a better choice. Mostly because I hate the Microsoft Outlook and all of that whole stack, and I like Google. But I mean, I have a Google Apps for my consulting business, and it's like $5 a month for everything. So you just pay that for all your employees, and you don't have to have a server, you don't have to maintain it, everything works great.
Yeah, but it's also $5 per employee for email account on Google Apps.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have 50 employees, that's
$5
$250 a month. I mean, that's not, in a business that size, it's how much would it cost to run that server? I mean,
run Exchange servers, it ain't that hard.
yeah.
Well, you have to put 25 open to your server.
Right. With Orbital Shift, we used Google too eventually. I just hesitated for the longest time. I think we just had wrappers on our Gmail accounts through our where we got our domain name, and just used our personal, but eventually we did that. I just never wanted to deal with it. I had so much on my plate, anything I could outsource, basically, like I did run a server, a Windows server, which its main purpose was it had SQL Server, so I could test our software locally without having to connect to the Rackspace server, because that's super slow when you're debugging in Visual Studio. So I had a database on there, and then every night it would remotely connect to Rackspace and pull down our database for a local backup. And that was basically what the server did. So this is where I was talking about that prediction, 12% will be done in the cloud. I looked that up, and it's just, I can't find like someone saying, well, this much of computing is done in the cloud, but I bet it was more, and now it's way more. So total market of 160 billion. These were estimates. I just kind of left these dated stats in just because it's kind of interesting to think of the scope. So reasons for choosing cloud: freeing internal IT staff, or not having an internal IT staff is what basically we did. Everything. And I think I talked about this in database. We had this idea of, what is it called? Dog fooding? Is that what it's called? Like, you use what you're trying to pitch. So if we're going to say use Orbital Shift, which is a cloud product, we should use all cloud products. I think it's called dog fooding. I know that sounds weird, but this was something we talked about. Dog fooding refers to the practice of using your own products. So we used Orbital Shift to clock into, even though we didn't need to clock in because we were, I was like an owner, I didn't have to get paid by the hour, but we also just used cloud products so that we could, if you're going to be a cloud company, use cloud products. So
yeah, that wouldn't look very good. Like, oh yeah, use cloud. Do you guys know?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So yeah, we pretty much were all cloud.
It's like a financial advisor who's bankrupt doing your finances.
Right. Faster access to applications than internal development. These same reasons could be said for off the shelf, right? Like, it's faster to buy a cloud product than to develop your own internally. Lower cost access to corporate quality applications. So I don't know. Lower cost is the thing about cloud, is it seems lower cost over time. It's not. I mean, that recurring revenue model, there's a reason why everybody wants it, because if you keep them happy, you make that money forever. So lower cost to entry though. The biggest like time clock software, because eventually Orbital Shift was time clock, is starts with a K. Like everybody has it. Like it's the standard. Anyway, they wanted to sell like to the Rosars corporate their system $500,000. 22 Rosars stores. That's up front. Like that's a huge chunk of money. We were going to sell them Orbital Shift when we never got past the local store, but for a few $1,000s a year, which is much lower cost entry, but that builds over time, and that's a good model for us. We're undercutting. I don't know why I'm blanking on what they're called, but it does have that lower cost of entry. If you go to tell someone, well, you need to buy Windows Server and it's $1,500, that's like, ugh. If you say, well, it's $50 a month, that sounds better. So,
or just Red Hat Linux.
Well, yeah. So concerns, reliability. I mean,
If your network's down.
yeah, I mean, reliability is a concern for any software as far as I'm concerned. I think for a long time, and I'm taking this stuff out of the book because that's what's here, and then we can kind of dissect it layered in our current knowledge. I think a lot of the concerns about cloud have been pretty diminished. People just haven't had as much trouble as what they anticipated. Like it's pretty reliable. Like internet connections are decent. I mean, yeah, they're better than they were. Let's put it that way. Like I can at least get 40 megabit down and 5 up at my house now, so
You get 6 on a good day.
yeah. So,
12
but I live in a newer subdivision in town,
I
so
live in Plain.
CenturyLink has like the newest equipment there. So
Middle of nowhere.
Still use DSL.
I didn't even
I use DSL.
No, I have.
Well, DSL's faster than cable anyway.
DSL's
If you-
better.
Yeah,
If you have the good equipment and you can get the 40, because everyone's like, oh, I have Charter, I get 60. That 60 is shared
I was
with
like-
everyone in your neighborhood. Like,
it's like you might get 60 to the building. You ain't getting it.
yeah.
to your
So, I
house,
mean,
so.
whatever drop point they do for the cable, I mean, my brother in Billings, it's unusable on that 60. Now, you can hit 60 at like 5 a.m, but that's it. Everybody gets on Netflix. You can't even like open a web page. So I like DSL because at least I'm getting that 40 to
Yeah,
me.
you get that direct line.
And for years I was on like 7, and now I got up to 40, and then complained about that they were charging too much, and now I think I get this 40 for $35 a month. So
You can pay, why do I pay $80 a month for 12?
yeah.
105 for 6.
It's all been together to get Google to put in Google Fiber.
Well, they advertise those promotional prices for CenturyLink all the time. Like it's super low for 2 years. And I called him. I was like, well, I've had your service for 6 years. I was like, but I want that promotional price too. And I was like, give it to me or else I'll cancel and I'll sign up again later, or I'll switch to Charter. And they're like, oh yeah, no big deal. They didn't even like put any resistance to it. So
My
Charter
aunt
does.
has- my aunt
Charter will do it
has
too.
Charter.
Uh-huh.
Her internet speeds like that. It's amazing because before she used to have like this huge, if we tried to download something and
Uh-huh.
some of like my cousins would go on, it would just drag behind. So like
it's really hit or miss depending on your neighborhood. Because some people Charter, no one uses it around them. They get 60 all the time. It's awesome. And DSL is horrible. It just depends what equipment they've installed in that area
I wish that DSL
But-
was-
between the providers. So
I'm just
They
amazed
have
at how
fiber
slow
right up
the internet
The highway, I'm
speeds
gonna let them
in-
off of the
in
highway.
general in this country are.
Yeah.
oh yeah, we're way behind.
Like I got back over the break. I went
One
over to
mile.
London, and in the
All it is
hotel
to me,
room,
1
I
mile.
was getting 70 megs a second.
Oh geez.
I mean,
I don't
and that
use
was
DSL.
consistent. So,
Yeah, it
like
was-
no problem.
I have
And
to.
when I was telling people over there, they were like, "Well, what do you get at your house?" I'm like, "About 25." They're like,
yeah,
25 is
Yeah.
a dial.
And we probably pay like 3 times as much.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I mean, a cell phone plan over there is about $21. It's equivalent.
Huh.
to the same thing we get here is about $95.
Rocky Mountain.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
they
we have
just,
some
I dropped cycles.
sort of pseudo monopolies in the telecommunications industry.
exactly. I mean, they're technically unregulated to
Right.
a point where they can charge whatever they want,
Yep.
even though it doesn't cost them anything. You know, it's
So this whole issue of reliability, like the last 2 years I was at Orbital Shift, we did time clock, and we sold a Google Nexus tablet with like $150 like industrial mount that hooked the tablet in so you couldn't take it out and you could bolt it down. And that was like the station. All it was running our mobile version of our website, and you could just log in on it and click clock in and clock out. And, you know, that sold great. It was so much cheaper than the alternatives. People were really concerned about the reliability. Well, what if the internet goes down? People aren't going to be able to clock in. And we just be like, well, you know, that could happen. You could write it down and just go add it in later. It hardly ever happened. You know, like people were clocking in for a couple of years, and we never really had a business call some freak out because it was not working for too long. So
That happened at McDonald's once the servers went down and everything just went, it was bad.
Yeah.
No one could use credit cards. We couldn't
I
really
remember
do
that.
anything.
I went through when they couldn't use credit cards one time, and they didn't tell me till I got to the window.
Yeah.
I don't normally carry cash,
yeah. I was gonna
but
say,
I for some reason had like $5 in my pocket and had enough money. But
I've had like, that day I had 10 people walk away from the front counter because I was like, well, we can't do credit cards. Our system's down. They're like, well, see ya.
I love it. You go to like Despo's over here, the bar Desperados.
yeah,
You know, cash only.
Yeah.
No nothing. And
there's like 3 businesses
I
in
know.
town. Honey Teriyaki
oh yeah,
doesn't
that's-
take.
yeah, that's right. And I know you walk in there and you're just like, you throw the card down. They're like, nope. I'm like,
Yeah,
get a square or something.
yeah, right.
Come
It's
on.
like not that expensive.
Yeah. Get in the 21st century. Jesus.
So for cloud, this whole idea of government regulations was a big concern, and it is a concern. Sarbanes-Oxley, which is like all the accounting and financial kind of regulations. But you know, like we got an SSL certificate for Orbital Shift at one point, and to get a real one is a pretty major undertaking. I mean, they make sure we had to tell them proof of rack spaces security, like they have machine gun guards at their server farms so no one can run in there. And you know, you have to like prove we take care of our documents well locally. And you know, that was what we reported, because that's what Rackspace said, is that they had armed guards at their, because that's the easiest way if you want to steal something is physically go and steal it,
Yeah.
rather than, because it's really hard to crack SSL encryption and a lot of the things.
Actually, over the main campus, we had a couple of lectures about cybersecurity, and one of the people in it is the one, you've seen the movie Sneakers? I'm sure. It was, I forgot who was in it,
Sounds familiar.
but they broke in, they basically steal stuff to check people's security and stuff like that.
Okay.
Well, he was a technical reference, and a lot of the things on the movie was how you would actually do it, but he'd leave out 1 or 2 steps.
Right,
What you
right.
actually have to do.
Of course.
And he brought up lock, saying, "Oh, let me show you how to lock pick." He brought people up and how you pick a lock. It's a joke to pick a lock.
Yeah.
And he also said, okay, these magnetic door locks that had that sensor that goes out,
Oh yeah.
that you walk in. He said, "Oh, this is how you defeat it. Get condensed air, put it upside down, stick it through the door, spray it. That cloud mist will detect someone moving, a motion, and unlock the doors."
Whoa. Yeah, that physical theft is a
I think what
old school, but the best way to go about
Yeah,
it.
what's
Yeah,
the old saying is the best way to hack into someone's computer is have the password.
Yeah.
You know, I
Walk
mean,
out with the
if you know, 'cause people leave their passwords
what we
everywhere.
did for a
Yeah,
living,
look for the
was
password
check
before you ever try hacking the computer.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Good places.
Wow.
And yeah, they have a conference over on the main campus about once a year on it for cybersecurity. It's free to go to. If next time they advertise one, if I see it advertised, let you guys know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's interesting. I've been to 2 of them so far.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, hey.
quite
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, we filmed that.
And you can legally own lockpicks.
Yeah, I know.
Most states you can. Not all states, but most states you can. Up to the time you're trying to break into something, that's when they become illegal. But until then, they're legal.
So in 2009, I got in a very big debate with some of my fellow MBA students because I decided I was going to use mint.com to do all my budgeting. Like you put all your bank accounts, it aggregates all the data. It was brand new back then. I still use it now 6 years later. And they were all telling me I was nuts that I would put my bank passwords into this aggregator site. And my argument to them was, you know, what the alternative is I use like a Quicken on my machine or something. There's a much higher risk that someone's going to steal my computer and have access to everything on my computer that's in Quicken than someone hacking into Mint and stealing that stuff. And now those aggregator sites, there's tons of them, and it's like lots of people use them.
I love the people that, especially here at the school, that you ask them, it's like, oh yeah, just get off Amazon. Oh, I don't shop on Amazon. I don't put anything. I'm thinking to myself, like, you've got all your personal information at the school on Moodle.
Yeah.
Who really does not have very much security at all, if any, compared to Amazon, who's got one of the biggest security departments in the world.
With Amazon, you just contact them and like, hey, within
Your biggest risk, I think, using credit cards is when you give them to a waiter or something at a restaurant.
Yeah.
That's way bigger than risk than using Amazon.
I love the
write
ones.
their whole card number down.
Yep.
Yeah, I love the ones that you call someone over the phone and they sit there and go, "Oh, what's your credit card number? You know, and what's the security code on the back, and what's the expiration?"
Yeah.
And they're going, how do you know they're not just
Yeah,
writing
you
it
order
down?
pizza, and I've done that like quite a few times, and like, yeah, that's way higher risk than buying something on Amazon.
Yeah.
You're at a higher risk of swiping your card at Subway.
Yeah.
That's why they went to smart chips. Matter of fact, the companies that do not have smart chips and someone steals your identity by you swapping that card, you can sue them.
Well, you know what's really funny about that is over in Europe, they're trying to go away from the smart chips to the cell phones and stuff
Yeah.
now, because they're like, look, as long as you have a physical card with a number on it, that's really insecure.
Yeah.
And us, we're just
now getting to there.
And they're like, oh, that's stupid. Go away from that crap. You know, like,
There you go.
so,
Change you.
So all right, let's get back so we can get through this.
There's your security.
So our fourth source of software is open source software. And this, again, I think we're all, oh, it's free, really? I didn't know that.
Whoa.
It includes source code, which is awesome if you want to modify it, you know, maintain. I mean, we just, Linux, Firefox, and MySQL, that was their examples. Those are pretty good examples now, especially the Linux and MySQL, just as far as, like we talked about in database, the percentage of the web that's run and served off of Linux MySQL combinations. So that's number 4. Number 5 is in-house development. So there could be 2 kind of ideas here, either a complete system or a hybrid. So you might be developing portions to connect existing products or to adapt existing products, or you might just be developing a whole system. Guy I teach with, his son works at Liberty Mutual, and you know he works on developing their internal system that they have built. Was that really 6? IT service firms, ERP, open source, in-house, off-the-shelf, cloud. Okay. So how do we pick these? This is kind of what leads in from that. There's only 4 more slides. The cost, obviously. Like I'm gonna, you know, like I said, sometimes I may sound negative about business, and I kind of am, but it's all about dollars, you know. So cost. It's never about people. It's about dollars.
That's the reason I'm not in the MIS program anymore. I'm in the computer science program.
Yeah.
Because the business portion of that just killed me.
Yeah. The reason why I'm a teacher now and not a business runner, owner. So the cost, in-house versus purchased, or any of the other choices. functionality, vendor support, viability of vendor, flexibility, documentation, response time, ease of installation. So these are the criteria they kind of lay out there. Obviously, it needs to have the functionality you need. What's the support from the vendor? Are you going to be able to talk to somebody? If that's your thing, I hate talking to people. So do they have good support on the site, or I like online chat? I hate talking to people on the phone. I don't know. I'm like, I guess just young enough where I'm kind of in all the kids, they don't talk on the phone at all.
Spoken like a true nerd.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Can I just like email him?
Yeah.
Send him a text?
Yeah, right. Flexibility. Well, talking about that CenturyLink thing, I spent 30 minutes on the online chat trying to get them to lower my bill. And all they did was try to pitch me. They had like all these boilerplate to bundle. They're like, well, how do you get your entertainment needs met? And like, I use Netflix. I like every time even though I knew it was pointless, I like counter argued everything they did just because I was in that kind of mood. And then finally at the end, they're like, well, you need to call. They might be able to do something. Like 5 minutes after I called, I was done and it was over. I was like, well, I should have done that at the beginning. Flexibility, documentation, response time. I mean, these are just kind of, I don't think rocket science, right? I mean, information from the vendor. So this is the documentation. Marketing. So this is like, you look at some software, how do you validate whether it's any good? Like, does the documentation suck? Yeah, I know. Like, I'm way more into that kind of a thing than this approach, but talk to people that have used it. I don't know. Looking at the marketing literature, I mean, I would X that as like the worst thing to look at because everybody's marketing looks good.
Because this is the best
I
product
was going
you're
to
ever
say,
gonna have.
nowadays it's really cheap to do marketing. So everyone's looks professional and, you can have a real nice website nowadays, no problem. And it can still be just crap, like.
What we identified as our biggest competitor for Orbital Shift put all their money into marketing and had a crappy product that didn't work. They got tons of investment and did great. And we had an awesome product and got nothing. So, I mean, marketing, I would not listen to. Questionnaire. So this idea of request for proposal is you want to purchase software, especially a bigger system. You put a request to them to give you a proposal of the costs and all that. And the book goes into greater detail about that. Software test drive. So just, can you test it? Which is
a demo version.
Yeah, right. Is there a demo?
Yeah.
Well, like our competitor, I signed up for a free trial of their software. The dang thing did not work. I don't know how they had so much money invested in it, but it was awful. So
free software trial that you could just keep renewing every 30 days.
Yeah. Feedback from other users. So that's kind of where we're saying independent software testing services. I don't know. Can you find any kind of reliable thing like that? Because everything I find is obviously not real. It's like biased. So
I mean, like maybe like some of the tech review companies and stuff. I mean, they sometimes do, but they don't review software very often.
Right.
It's mostly just hardware products and stuff.
You see all those lists online, the top 10 best online scheduling software. You'd see those and it's just like, it's sponsored, so people are paying to be on that list. And
I was going to say, I know like CNET and stuff is paid by Samsung to review their products now. And I've never heard a bad review of anything. Samsung's on there. In Techno Buffalo, you'll get on there and they just bash them all day long. Like, hey, it's got TouchWiz, it doesn't work very well.
Used to be the magazines that were so biased, and now it's the web reviews. I mean, I used to be into motocross, and I'd get the four-wheeler mag. I did ATVs, like dirt wheels, and like everything that came out they said it was great. They never said anything was bad.
Yeah.
So reuse. So, I mean, obviously using previously written software for something new. This is a lot easier now with object-oriented. If you've designed software to be good, using the kind of paradigms of good software and maintainability, reusability is one of the paradigms that you want to shoot for. It's easy to pull those components into something new. If you have some good classes to do certain things, and that's kind of obvious. So it's going to be more productive because it's faster. You're going to have less defects and errors because it's existing software that's been used and tested. It reduces rework. So, the trick with reuse is, are we trying to fit a square peg in a round hole because we have this here, or is this really the best viable solution? So summary, and then we'll get out of here a teeny bit early. Outsourcing, because would you guys agree a lot of this is like not super complicated? Some of
and a lot of it's dated too.
Yeah, some of chapter 1 was more like the definitions and the things that are a little newer, I think, to us. The 6 sources, IT service firms, off the shelf, ERP, though ERP is kind of an off the shelf, right? Cloud, open source. What one did I miss?
You'd sit off the shelf. In-house.
In-house. That was the one I missed. In-house. We talked about the evaluation of off-the-shelf software and reuse. Done. So next week we'll go into chapter 3. Start thinking about a project. Just, it's good to kind of give it time to marinate. I think my criteria will be that you'll identify a problem in a fictional business of your choosing and then propose some way to improve on that. And of course, we're going to be much more into the prototype. Like, we're not going to develop a fully blown solution, but think in the scale of something that's actually possible. Great example. Amber's not here today. She lives in a condo association, and she in her database designed a database to store information about the condo association because they have no system to do that, and it's awful. That would be a perfect, I would encourage her to keep going down that route, because that's a problem with something that can be addressed in a reasonable manner in the scope of this kind of a project. Yep.
What exactly would we be using it for our projects?
To develop it?
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Okay.
I'm giving you flexibility to do it in whatever you are most comfortable doing it in. And we can discuss choices. You guys take Visual Basic, right? A lot of they did in the past, I guess. So Visual Basic is a good option. Now Python, right, is what has replaced it in some of those courses.
C++, Java.
So
if you do a little Python in the what is it, 105 or
the fluency.
But,
so, and then we have some people that are almost like non-programmers. So then you did good on your database project. So we'll figure out ways to work within that scope. We had a lot of database people who didn't know how to program, and everybody produced something pretty good in the end. Web is a good way, I think, to think of doing some kind of web database-backed web page is a good idea for the project. Damon's got some crazier idea, but he's pretty good with development, with programming. So
Damon lives to make the rest of us look bad. So.
I'm on that list.
Hi, Damon, if you watch this.
Is.
Right? So,
He's laying in bed, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, you won't see it today. So.
I don't know why when I'm closing here. So that's it for me. I'll try to figure out how to shut. Oh, it does say we had a viewer.
Yeah, it was Damon.
Okay, I was muted.
They're muted the whole time.
I didn't know he was really there.
Oh, no, he did, because he said if we didn't make too much noise,
Okay. I had it muted because that weird noise was coming out. Hey, Damon, are you there?
We won't hear you for 5 minutes.
Yeah. I don't know if it's delayed on just the YouTube, but the regular hang, I would hope, is live.
What, wasn't it delayed yesterday on you?
Well,
A little bit.
when we first started, but then as it got closer to the end, it was almost identical. So.
All right, farewell, whoever's out there.